The city of Ashfall had always prided itself on its towers, its technology, its sense of safety. At least, that's what the people told themselves. But on this morning, the ground beneath their feet betrayed them. It vibrated subtly at first, a tremor that made coffee cups wobble on counters, street signs sway in the wind, and the first birds of dawn scatter into the sky. Elliot was on his way to the engineering lab, backpack slung across his shoulder, when the tremor hit again, stronger, more deliberate. The pavement cracked beneath his boots. He froze, looking around at the streets that had always felt so solid, so permanent. Something wasn't right. He wasn't alone. Across the plaza, a woman shrieked as a fissure split the ground near her feet. People ran in panic, unsure of whether the earth itself was attacking them or if some monstrous earthquake had begun without warning. But Elias' instincts told him it was neither. Something older, something alive, was staring. His thoughts raced back to the old ruins on the outskirts of the city. Forgotten temples and carvings buried in the dust of history. Stories his grandmother had whispered when he was a child. Stories of beasts that had once ruled the skies, guardians of a world humanity barely understood. Everyone had dismissed them as myths. Everyone but him. And now, he saw it. At first, it was a shadow, a dark smudge against the orange-pink sunrise. But as it grew closer, details became horrifyingly clear. Massive wings unfurled with a sound like thunder rolling across mountains. Scales glinted like molten metal, catching the first rays of the sun. The eyes, immense, golden, and burning with intelligence, swept across the city. They were not the eyes of a mindless predator. They were calculating, deliberate. Elias' breath caught. He stumbled backward, heart hammering, but he couldn't look away. The dragon, an ancient creature from nightmares, was awake. The streets erupted into chaos. Cars crashed as drivers panicked. Pedestrians screamed, scattering in all directions. The tremor of each wingbeat sent debris flying. Glass shattered in nearby buildings, and the smell of ozone filled the air. It was as if the city itself was being exhaled by the creature, and humanity was nothing more than insects beneath its gaze. Elliot ran. He had to warn someone, anyone, before it reached the heart of Ashfall. But phones didn't work. Radios were dead. Electricity flickered and then went out, plunging sections of the city into darkness. The dragon's roar, a sound that shook the very air, echoed through the streets. People stumbled and fell, clutching their ears, their cries blending with the animalistic thunder of the beast above. He made it to the central square, panting and wide-eyed. A few officials had gathered there, staring upward in disbelief. The mayor, a stout man named Garrick, looked as pale as the concrete beneath their feet. It's a dragon, Elliot gasped, struggling to catch his breath. An ancient dragon, it's awake. We have to evacuate the city now. The council members exchanged uncertain glances. One muttered, dragons aren't real. Elliot's jaw tightened. They're real. Right there. Look. He pointed to the sky, and for the first time, even the skeptics followed his gaze. The creature was massive, landing just beyond the city edge. The ground cracked and smoked with the heat radiating from it. No one spoke. No one moved. The reality of the situation was a silent terror that gripped their hearts. Elliot swallowed hard. He needed to act. He sprinted toward the city's emergency command center, weaving through debris and terrified citizens. Sirens wailed, but they sounded distant compared to the pounding of the dragon's wings. Smoke curled from the edges of buildings the dragon's shadow had already touched. Somewhere, a child cried, and Elliot's stomach twisted. He reached the command center and burst through the doors, finding Lieutenant Mara, a veteran of emergency operations, trying to coordinate the evacuation. Mara, the dragon, it's here. We need every evacuation route open, now. She looked up, disbelief etched on her face. Are you serious? Elliot didn't answer. He pointed outside, and her gaze followed. Her eyes widened in horror, and she swallowed audibly. By the gods, it's... The creature roared again, and this time, Elliot felt it. Not just in his ears, but deep in his chest, vibrating through his bones. It was an announcement, a warning, a declaration of dominance. Ashfall was no longer theirs. Not today. Not anymore. Mara snapped into action, barking orders, and for a brief moment, humanity rallied. But Elliot knew it wasn't enough. The dragon was ancient, unstoppable, and unlike anything they had faced. Their weapons would barely scratch its scales. their cities, their technology. They were fragile against a force that had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. He clenched his fists. Fear burned in his chest, but so did something else, a spark of determination. Humanity had survived worse. They had adapted, endured, and fought against the odds before. And if this dragon wanted war, then Elia would find a way to fight back. But first, they had to survive the morning. Outside, the dragon spread its wings wide, casting the entire city into shadow. Its golden eyes scanned, calculating, and Elia knew one truth with icy certainty. Humanity had awakened a force far older than they imagined, and it was hungry, patient, and far from done. The ground shook again, louder, deeper, and closer. The dragon's shadow moved over the city like a storm cloud, and Ashfall braced for the first of countless strikes. The city of Ashfall was no longer a place of order or safety. The streets, once crowded with early commuters and morning vendors, had become rivers of chaos. Smoke curled from shattered windows, and the air vibrated with a low, menacing hum, the beat of wings that belonged to a creature older than any human memory. Elia ran alongside Lieutenant Mara, dodging overturned vehicles and panicked citizens. The dragon's shadow stretched across the city like a living wall, swallowing entire blocks in darkness. He could hear the distant roar of helicopters, their blades slicing through the turbulent air, only to be thrown violently off course by gusts from the dragon's massive wings. It's unstoppable, a man shouted as a fireball licked the street near him, melting asphalt and sending him sprawling to the ground. People screamed, some frozen in disbelief, others screaming at loved ones, trying desperately to escape. Elia's heart pounded. He had studied dragons in ancient texts, in myths and relics, but nothing had prepared him for this. The sheer scale of it, the intelligence in its eyes, the precision in every movement. This was not a mindless beast. It was a predator, calculating each strike, each sweep of its wings, with deliberate intent. "Command center!" Mara yelled over the chaos, pulling Elia toward a reinforced bunker beneath City Hall. "We need to coordinate an evacuation, or everyone's dead." Inside, the atmosphere was a controlled frenzy. Officers barked orders into radios, trying to mobilize emergency vehicles, but Elia noticed something terrifying. Communications were failing. Signals were jammed, devices overloaded. The dragon's presence seemed to interfere with every piece of technology, rendering their most powerful tools useless. And then it happened. The first firestorm. A wave of molten heat swept across the plaza as the dragon landed near the northern edge of the city. Its scales shimmered like molten metal, each movement sending sparks into the air. Cars erupted in flames, their tires exploding in showers of fire. The screams of citizens became a deafening chorus, blending with the low, resonant roar that shook buildings to their foundations. Elia pressed himself against the wall, stomach twisting as the heat licked his face. He had never witnessed such destructive power. Even the tallest skyscrapers trembled as the dragon's claws raked across the streets. Helicopters, helpless against the turbulent air, spun out of control and crashed in a blaze of steel and fire. Mara's voice cut through the chaos. "We can't hold them off. We need civilians out now." Elia swallowed hard. "Weapons won't work. Nothing will stop it." The dragon seemed to sense their panic. Its golden eyes narrowed, scanning for movement. A group of citizens tried to flee down an alleyway, only to find the creature's tail sweeping in a brutal arc, throwing them against the walls. Elia's stomach churned, but he forced himself to focus. Panic would get them all killed. He grabbed a radio, trying to reach anyone outside the bunker. "This is Elia. Evacuate, north and east routes. Do not engage." His voice was trembling, but he repeated it, over and over, until the channels were silent again. Outside, the dragon roared, a sound that reverberated through the very bones of the city. Smoke and fire spiraled into the sky as it took to the air, wings beating with a force that created a windstorm below. Trees were uprooted. Signs and debris were thrown into the streets like matchsticks. The city had become a battlefield, and humanity was the prey. Elia could see the creature circling back, descending toward the heart of Ashfall. Panic had turned into chaos. People were running blindly, some trying to fight, others too paralyzed with fear to move. Fire trucks had been destroyed. Police barricades were torn apart. It was an assault unlike anything recorded in human history. And yet, humanity didn't give up. From the command center, Mara shouted instructions, organizing small groups of survivors, guiding them through hidden passages and underground tunnels. The city's emergency systems, though compromised, still allowed some movement. People were fleeing, scrambling to survive, proving the resilience that Elia had always admired in humanity. But the dragon was relentless. It landed atop a high-rise, claws sinking into steel beams, smoke curling from every impact. It let out a roar that seemed almost sentient, a warning, a challenge. Elia felt the vibration through his chest, a reminder that they were facing something beyond any conventional threat. He looked at Mara, eyes wide. It's learning. Every movement we make, it adapts. She nodded grimly. We can't fight it head-on. We survive. That's all we can do. For now. Elia clenched his fists, heart pounding, as he realized the terrifying truth. Ashfall was no longer theirs. Humanity had awoken a force that was older, stronger, and smarter than any civilization they had built. The city was burning, the streets were chaos, and yet, somehow, they were still standing. The dragon roared again, louder this time, a deafening bellow that shook the windows of the bunker. It spread its wings, readying for another strike, and Elia knew that the morning's horrors were only the beginning. The sky was aflame, the city trembled, and humanity, though battered, terrified, and outmatched, was beginning to understand that survival would demand everything they had, and more. The city of Ashfall smoldered like a corpse under a dying sun. Streets once bustling with life were now twisted ruins, filled with smoke, overturned vehicles, and the occasional echo of distant screams. The dragon had retreated, for now, but its presence was everywhere. Scorched buildings, cracked streets, and the faint smell of sulfur that clung to the air. Elia stumbled through the rubble, clutching a makeshift satchel of tools he had grabbed from the lab. Every step was a reminder of humanity's fragility. Yet, amid the chaos, there was a flicker of something else, determination. Survival wasn't just instinct. It was a rebellion against the impossible. Lieutenant Mara met him at the edge of the plaza, her face streaked with soot and sweat. We can't fight it head-on, she said bluntly, scanning the horizon. Not with what we have. But maybe we can outthink it. Elia nodded. We need a plan. We need everyone who's left to band together, or the city, hell, humanity, won't last another day. The two of them moved toward the underground command tunnels beneath City Hall. These passages had been designed for emergencies, for natural disasters or terrorist attacks, but they had never imagined needing them for a dragon. Inside, dozens of survivors huddled around flickering lights, sharing meager supplies and whispered fears. At the center, Commander Thane, a veteran of countless military operations, stood over a table scattered with maps, blueprints, and ancient manuscripts. His presence was calm but commanding, a steadying force amid panic. Elia, Mara, he said without looking up. We've seen its patterns. It doesn't move randomly. It's hunting, learning, adapting. Every strike is calculated. Elia swallowed hard. Then conventional weapons won't work. Not missiles, not guns. Nothing we have can pierce its scales. Thane nodded grimly. Exactly. We're going to have to use brains over firepower. And that means tapping into knowledge humanity forgot long ago. Elia's eyes widened. You mean, the old texts? Yes, Thane replied. Legends aren't always lies. These ruins, these carvings, they hold clues. The dragon isn't just a creature, it's a guardian, and it remembers what humans once did to this world. The realization hit Elia like a punch to the chest. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a reckoning. Humanity had awoken a force older than civilization itself, and now they had to prove they deserved to exist. Over the next few hours, survivors worked tirelessly. Engineers, historians, and volunteers pored over manuscripts and schematics. They discovered references to the dragon's abilities, its patterns of attack, and even hints at weaknesses, ancient knowledge encoded in symbols and diagrams, waiting for someone to understand. Meanwhile, outside, the dragon observed from above. It circled the city, wings slicing through the sky with the precision of a predator that had hunted for millennia. Its golden eyes scanned every movement, every attempt to regroup, as if testing humanity's resolve. Elia and Mara led a small team to set up surveillance points and early warning systems using scavenged drones and sensors. Every signal they received from the outer districts brought updates on the dragon's movements. It was learning, adapting, and sometimes deliberately sending them false cues, a predator playing with its prey. Hours turned into a tense night. Fires continued to burn across the city, casting long, flickering shadows against walls and rubble. Survivors shared stories, memories of lives interrupted, but also hope, fragile, stubborn, unyielding. Elia couldn't help but feel a strange pride in humanity's ability to endure. Even when facing a creature that could crush them with a single strike, they fought. Finally, Thane called a meeting. Around the table, they laid out their first strategy: lure the dragon into a zone rigged with traps and explosives, using the knowledge gleaned from the ancient texts to predict its behavior. It was risky, deadly, but it was the first real plan. They had to take the fight to the dragon rather than just running. Elia swallowed, staring at the maps. If this fails, the city dies. Thane's gaze was steady. Then we make sure it doesn't fail. Humanity has survived worse. This is just another fight. Mara checked the weapons they had managed to salvage. We can't pierce its scales, but we can use speed, fire, and misdirection. Make it think it's winning, then strike where it least expects. Elia nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on him. He had never imagined himself a warrior or strategist, but the city needed every mind, every hand. Every ounce of courage would matter. As the first light of dawn began to break, they received a signal from a drone near the northern district. The dragon was moving again. Its roar echoed across the city, a reminder that the battle was far from over. Elia clenched his fists. It's coming back. Thane placed a hand on his shoulder. And when it does, we'll be ready. Not just to survive, but to fight. Outside, the sky darkened with wings. The dragon was aware now, fully awake, and fully engaged. Humanity had begun its first real resistance, but the creature above Ashfall was unlike anything they had ever faced. Every second, it learned. Every movement, it adapted. And every strike promised destruction beyond imagination. The first night of survival had passed. The fight for Ashfall, and humanity itself, was only beginning. The city of Ashfall lay in uneasy silence. Fires still burned along the streets, but the dragon had vanished from view, leaving only scorched buildings and shattered vehicles in its wake. The survivors in the underground tunnels moved cautiously, their faces pale but determined. Humanity had endured its first night against the ancient predator, and lived, but the cost was clear. Elia trudged through the debris with Mara and Commander Thane. It's smarter than we thought, Elia muttered, scanning the rubble. Every time we think we know what it will do, it surprises us. Thane nodded grimly. It's not a beast. It's a sentinel, and it remembers. Elia frowned. Remembers what? Thane pointed to the ancient manuscripts scattered across a table. This, human history, before we had cities, before we had guns. It's encoded here. Symbols, carvings, warnings. This dragon isn't just a creature. It's a guardian of something older than civilization itself. It's judging humanity, testing us. Mara leaned closer, squinting at the intricate diagrams. Judging us for what? Destruction, Thane said simply. Mankind has always destroyed what it cannot control. This dragon, and others like it in the past, were created to maintain balance. It's awakening now because we've reached a tipping point, and it knows exactly what we're capable of. Elia's stomach churned. The thought was terrifying. They weren't just fighting a monster. They were facing the consequences of millennia of human arrogance. Hours passed as the team delved deeper into the texts. Symbols that had seemed like random shapes at first revealed patterns, weak points in the dragon's armor, hints at its behavior, and even suggestions that humans had once possessed abilities now dormant. Dormant abilities? Mara asked, skepticism in her voice. Thane nodded. Genetic traits, passed down through generations, suppressed by evolution and civilization. The texts imply that humans were once capable of perceiving, even manipulating, the same elemental forces as these dragons. We've lost much of it, but some of it may still exist, waiting to be awakened under extreme circumstances. Elias' mind raced. Could it be possible? Could they tap into some hidden potential, some forgotten power, to fight a creature that defied technology and logic? Their discussion was interrupted by a faint tremor beneath the city. The ground vibrated lightly at first, then more violently. Dust fell from the ceiling of the tunnel as the sound of distant, powerful wings reached their ears. It's back, Mara whispered, eyes wide. They emerged cautiously through a hidden exit, arriving at a vantage point overlooking the northern district. The dragon was there, circling above the ruins, its golden eyes scanning the streets like searchlights. It moved with precision, avoiding obvious obstacles, striking only when it deemed necessary. It wasn't hunting blindly. It was testing, learning, calculating. Elia swallowed hard. It's intelligent. It's watching us, understanding us. Everything we do. It knows. Thane's jaw tightened. And that's why we need more than brute force. We need strategy. And we need to awaken the part of ourselves that can match it, somehow. Mara frowned, pointing at the dragon. Do you really think we can awaken some hidden power fast enough? Thane's eyes met his, resolute. We don't have a choice. Either we evolve, or we perish. Elias' gaze drifted to the dragon's scales, glinting in the sunlight. Symbols seemed to shimmer faintly on its surface, patterns almost imperceptible to the human eye. They weren't random markings, they were inscriptions, ancient language carved into flesh and stone. The dragon carried its history with it, a living testament to what humans had once done and what they might become again. Every generation, Thane continued, has faced its trial. This is ours. He turned to Elia. And if we survive, it won't just be a fight against fire and claw. It will be a fight against the limits we've placed on ourselves. We may have to push beyond fear, beyond instinct. Only then can we hope to stand a chance. Elia's hands clenched. He felt a strange surge of resolve. Fear was still there, immense, overwhelming. But beneath it, determination burned brighter. Humanity had endured floods, plagues, wars, and famine. Against the dragon, they were small, but small didn't mean powerless. The dragon landed atop a ruined skyscraper, claws digging into steel beams. Its wings folded slowly, deliberately, and it let out a low, resonant roar, a sound that vibrated in the chest, a declaration of awareness. Elia realized the truth. It wasn't just hunting. It was communicating, testing, waiting for them to respond. Mara whispered, almost to herself, it's challenging us. Yes, Thane said quietly, and if we answer correctly, we survive. If not, his voice trailed off as the dragon spread its wings again, preparing to strike. Elia took a deep breath. They had seen what brute force could do. It couldn't stop the dragon. Now they had knowledge, strategy, and perhaps, just perhaps, something deeper hidden within themselves. It was time to fight not only with weapons but with the courage and ingenuity that had always defined humanity. The dragon's golden eyes glowed like molten fire against the smoke-filled sky. Its presence was a test, a reckoning, and as Ashfall survivors steeled themselves, they realized that the next encounter would not be just about survival. It would be about awakening the very essence of what it meant to be human. The first light of dawn painted Ashfall in a strange, eerie glow. The city lay in ruins, streets cracked and smoldering, fires flickering in abandoned buildings. Smoke curled into the sky like dark fingers, a reminder of the destruction that had come and gone, and of the threat that had yet to be fully faced. Elia, Mara, and Commander Thane stood on the edge of the northern district, overlooking the dragon's chosen battlefield. The creature perched atop the tallest skyscraper, wings folded but massive claws digging deep into the steel frame. Its golden eyes scanned the streets, alert, aware, patient. It was waiting for them, and they knew it. This is it, Thane said, voice steady but heavy. Everything we've learned, everything we've prepared, it comes down to this moment. Elia nodded, his mind racing with the knowledge gleaned from the ancient texts. Symbols and patterns swirled in his memory. The dragon's weaknesses, its behaviors, the potential within humans that had long been dormant. Fear still gnawed at his gut, but determination burned brighter. This was more than survival. This was humanity's reckoning. The dragon roared, a deep, resonant sound that shook the city to its foundations. Windows shattered, dust and debris rained down, and Elia felt the vibration deep in his chest. The ground trembled with every beat of its wings. It was a challenge, a declaration, and a test all at once. Elia stepped forward, feeling a strange pulse within himself. The texts had hinted at it, that under extreme circumstances, humans could tap into a hidden reservoir of strength, a connection to forces beyond normal comprehension. His hands tingled, his vision sharpened, and for the first time, he felt more. Now, Thane said, his voice a steady anchor. "We strike. Smart, precise, coordinated. Make it think it's winning, then hit where it least expects." The survivors spread out, activating the traps and diversions they had prepared. Explosives were positioned, fire was ready to channel, and every move was designed to confuse, distract, and exploit the dragon's calculated attacks. The dragon took to the sky again, wings slicing through the smoke-filled air. Its roar was deafening, a warning that shook the entire district. It was fast, intelligent, and relentless, striking down structures and vehicles with precision. But Elia felt something strange, something primal, connected. He raised his hands instinctively, and a sudden pulse of energy shot through him, reacting to the dragon's presence. The air shimmered around him, and for a moment, time seemed to slow. Mara watched, eyes wide. "Elia, what are you doing?" I don't know," he shouted, a mix of fear and awe in his voice. "But I can feel it. I can fight it." With newfound resolve, Elia focused, moving through the battlefield with uncanny speed and precision. He coordinated with the traps and diversions, anticipating the dragon's attacks before they came. The creature roared, wings slamming into the ground, but Elia adapted, using every skill, every insight, every ounce of human ingenuity he could summon. The dragon's strikes grew more intense, but Elia and the resistance were ready. Fire erupted along the streets, guided to create false paths and traps. Explosives detonated in calculated bursts, forcing the dragon to change course repeatedly. The creature's golden eyes narrowed. It understood now. Humanity was not simply fleeing. Humanity was fighting back. Elia felt it, an ancestral strength awakening, the hidden potential the texts had described. He extended his hands, channeling focus into the energy he could barely control. The ground trembled as pulses radiated outward, disrupting the dragon's flight, staggering it mid-air. For the first time, the creature faltered. Thane barked orders. Mara coordinated the survivors, and together, they pressed the attack. The dragon let out a final, ear-shattering roar, a sound that resonated through the city, through the air, and even through the hearts of humans fighting below. It spread its wings, preparing for a devastating strike, but Elia was ready. He stepped forward, channeling every bit of strength and strategy into a final maneuver. The energy surged, connecting with the dragon, and for a brief, glorious instant, human and dragon were locked in a battle not of brute force but of will and intelligence. The creature's eyes widened, a flash of recognition passing across its ancient face. It understood that humanity had grown, that they were no longer mere prey. And then, silence. The dragon let out one last roar, not of rage, but of acknowledgement. It spread its wings, lifting into the sky, and for a moment, it hovered above the city, golden eyes scanning the survivors below. Then, with a sweep of its wings, it vanished into the horizon, leaving a battered but unbroken city in its wake. Elia sank to his knees, gasping, sweat and soot streaking his face. Mara and Thane approached, placing hands on his shoulders. "We did it," Mara whispered, awe in her voice. Thane shook his head slowly. "We survived. But remember this, the dragon's presence is still out there. Its judgment isn't over. We've only proven that humanity can fight back, not that the war is done." Elia looked to the horizon where the dragon had disappeared, the sky tinged with the light of dawn. The city lay in ruins, but humanity had endured, adapted, and survived against an impossible foe. They had faced fire, claw, and ancient intelligence, and emerged alive, stronger, and wiser. The survivors began to emerge from the tunnels, helping one another, rebuilding in small ways, tending to the injured. Elia rose slowly, looking at the city he had fought for, and felt a surge of pride. Humanity had been tested, and they had not failed. The wind carried a faint echo of a roar from far beyond the horizon. Elia's chest tightened. The dragon had departed, but its challenge lingered. Humanity had proven it could fight, but the world had changed forever. The city smoldered, the survivors endured, and the sun rose over Ashfall. Humanity had faced an ancient terror, and survived. For now,